once you align with your purpose and just keep listening, going back to that purpose, going back to that pot of water, saying, why are you doing this? What's my why? My why is cultural connection. My why is making people feel connected and seen and heard and acknowledged. And that's through my work. So I'll just keep doing that, and then all the other accolades just naturally come because you're living your truth and you're living your purpose.
Hey, this is and welcome back to Edges and Drinks TV. If it's your first time here, you're up for a treat. I'm your host, Miriam Nabunya, the founder of Edges and Drinks, a physical and digital platform where we aim to connect, equip, and celebrate Black and Brown women in the Nordics. This month, we are dedicating the month of March to Afro-Nordic women that are changing the narrative. And when I tell you that we have a unicorn in the house, we have a sought-after interview object and a fellow sister. This person that we have here is an award-winning author. She is a visual storyteller, an international bestseller. She is an entrepreneur, photographer, and the list goes on. Her work that you might have seen has been featured in Natural Geographic, the New York Times, The Guardian, BBC, CNN, the Travel Channel, Forbes, and the Huffington Post. And yet again, the list goes on. It's my absolute pleasure to introduce you to the astonishing, the talented, the wonderful Lola Akinmade Orchestra.
Oh, thank you so much, Miriam. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. Is it your first time in Oslo?
No. I mean, I've been to Oslo many times. I've been here on assignment, and I live in Sweden, which is just like next door, right? So I've been here to Oslo many times.
That's lovely, because the thing is, like, other reason why we're so grateful to have you here is because you are unfortunately not very known to the Norwegian audience, but our fellow sisters know of you, and especially the ones in Sweden and abroad. And we've got some questions for you that have been dropping in lately, so I'll get to that. But Lola, you are what some have said, a multi-potentialite. What does that, can you elaborate a little bit on that?
No, absolutely. So a multi-potentialite is someone who has many creative interests and does them all very well. But I call myself a storyteller. So the platform is irrelevant. For me, this is a story I want to tell. Okay, is writing going to tell it the best way? Is photography going to tell it the best way? Is an opinion piece for a newspaper going to tell it the best way? So at art, I am a storyteller. And so for me, it's what am I trying to say? What's the message? And then I pick the platform. So that's why it feels like I do lots of different things. But it's because I picked the right platform for the story.
You broke it down so well. You know what? Thank you so much for that, because this past Saturday we had an event that we called Equipping the Women of Tomorrow, and we had the demography was about 35 to 65, and we had some of our fellow sisters or aunties, I would say, around their 40s and late 40s and early 50s, and they were talking about this being in an industry or career that they've been into for so long, and they want to transition and do kind of the same thing they have been doing, but in a different way, and didn't know how to step into that.
Of course.
So like when you say like multi-potentialite, kind of breaks that down.
Yeah, absolutely. But it all stems from your why. You need to know why you're doing something, what's your purpose, and then you can take that purpose into different industries. So for example, remember during the pandemic, the travel industry went down.
Yes.
And I work in the travel industry.
You do.
And so what I was telling people is, your purpose is not to travel. Your purpose is why you choose travel as the avenue.
Yes.
So if you think about it like a stove with different burners, your passion and your purpose is the pot. You can move it on different burners. It will still cook, right?
Yes.
But travel is the biggest burner. That's why you put it there. That's what makes your passion
Bubble, yes.
quicker. But if that burner doesn't work, you can still move that passion somewhere else. It will still bubble, maybe not as strongly as travel, but it will still work. So that's why it's important for people to know what their passion is, their purpose, because then you can take that in different industries, right?
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no
It's
worries.
a wrap, people. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe. Oh my God. Lola, have you always been this way, this clear on what you wanted to do? Have you always known, like, you know what, mommy and daddy back home in Nigeria, I'm a storyteller.
So I've always known that I loved traveling, right? Because when I was younger, we used to travel, not as much, but at least every year we went to different places. And my dad worked in a profession where I traveled a lot. And geography was my favorite subject. So I knew travel was going to be part of it. I also grew up in Lagos. And Nigeria as a whole, we've got over 250 different tribes, speaking over 500 languages, right? And so I got to be able to grow up and live in a place with lots of different cultures in a small place, right? And so for me, I've always been interested in culture. But now, how I found my own storytelling voice is when I moved to the US. And I was moving already with a sense of identity. You know, I'm Nigerian, I'm Yoruba, this is me.
How old were you then?
I was 15, so I was moving to go start college. And when I moved to the US, I was moving into a different environment that already created a narrative for me and said, oh, you're now a black woman, this is your box, go sit there. And I'm like, well, yes, but I'm also this and that, and I've got multiple identities, right? And so what happened is, because people couldn't relate to me, I became isolated and excluded a lot. And that's what happens. When we can't relate to somebody, we exclude and isolate them.
Of course.
That was how I found my voice. Because I say the source of your creative voice is usually tied to a source of pain, right?
Please repeat that. Repeat that.
The source of your creative voice is usually tied to a source of pain. And so for me, it was fighting exclusion and isolation because I felt it. And so that is what has become my purpose, is how can I reduce isolation and exclusion? How can people feel more seen and heard and acknowledged through my work? How can I create and foster cultural understanding so people understand and see each other more? And that all came back because I was denied that when I first moved. So that is what I always tell people sometimes. You need to kind of mine your life, see where are some of the parts that were sources of pain and trauma. Sometimes that's where your voice as a storyteller lies.
Okay, so now you're in the States, you understood your voice at the age of 15.
Yes.
Okay, and storytelling, what was your first avenue of storytelling? Because you don't start by taking photos and writing and doing everything at once. What was your first avenue?
So that was actually before I moved to the US. I used to write fiction when I was in boarding school, you know, and I used to write all these short stories in notebooks. And my friends used to actually come and check them out. So I had like a sign-out sheet. This book, you take it, you bring it back, my short stories, right? And so that was where I started writing and kind of fantasizing about the world that was more kind of meshed, you know, where people just saw each other and loved each other and didn't fight based on our differences. But then when I moved to the US, I went into a very technical field. I worked in IT for many years as a system architect, but that draw of storytelling was always there. And so I ended up in the travel industry as a travel writer. And so even with travel writing, it is storytelling, right?
Most definitely.
Because I don't tell you that Italy is beautiful, go to Italy. I have to show you through my words why you need to go to Italy, right? But I wanted to go back to fiction because fiction was the first love. And so when I started looking closer to my lived experiences, I said, you know what? I'm a black woman in the Nordics. I have friends across different spectrums in different communities. My lived experience is also an important narrative of Sweden's story. You know, so why am I not using my platform to also share my own experiences and other people's experiences? And so that's kind of how I started getting back into fiction, looking closer into our lived experiences.
Okay. Do you have any? I see that you're saying that these are your ways of expressing your storytelling because that's your first love.
Yes.
Is there what inspires this first love? Did you just wake up one day?
Got you. Well, it was so what inspired that first love of writing was because I loved geography and I was always curious about the world. So I was like, how can I create stories from places I've never been or people I've never seen, you know? And so that was how my imagination came. And when I was young, I would look at magazines and just cut out photos of different people and put them on my little notebook and say, these are the characters in my book, you know? So all of that curiosity came at a very young age. And that was also what potentially moved me into travel writing, because with travel writing, you have to be a very curious person, you know, to explore and interact and get beneath different cultures. So that's kind of where it came from.
Okay. Do you have any role models?
So many role models, and I always say, I mean, it depends on the context, right? So, for example, if I think of like Black women and the potential to self-actualize, meaning build their own tables and grow, then people like the opera, you know, people like that show the possibility of what a Black woman can do in terms of building. And then there are the authors, you know, I really enjoy Chimamanda's work, you know, there are lots of newer authors like Onyiwan Beleli and Nikki May, and lots of kind of contemporary Black authors that are writing about the Black British experience with a contemporary voice.
Yes.
And so I know that in the Nordics, there's still a gap.
There is.
And they're fantastic writers. We need to start kind of writing our stories. And I think that's the fight I'm fighting with the Swedish publishing industry, is they need to be publishing more stories of marginalized voices so that it shows a wider, more complete picture of society. So there's an opportunity there, and this is also even for people here in Norway to start writing like the story, the Black experience, the brown experience, because it's a lot of missing gaps in Nordic literature.
Thank you so much for your work, because what you just said right now is also one of our motivations of why we wanted you here, and especially during this month. Because the work that you're doing, how you're amplifying our experience as Black and brown women in the Nordics and in Sweden. I grew up in Sweden. I was born in Uganda, grew up in Sweden, and been here for 50 years.
Okay.
And there's so many things. I've read snippets from your books where I have memories of those experiences. Although it's not me, although that person, the only thing that we have, like the only main thing that you can target at once is we have the same skin color, but it feels that we've lived the same life. So the fact that you are still putting yourself out there, you're still telling our stories, and the fact that your work is world known. It's international. You've won so many prizes. Like literally, I went into your Wikipedia. Have you read your own Wikipedia? I went into it and I was scrolling and I was like, this woman has just won prizes. Like, made something, won. Made something else, won. But the fact that the Swedish market just doesn't want to portray that, acknowledge that.
Yeah, because that is also the missing narrative in as Black women. We're tired of surviving. We want to thrive.
Amen.
We want to thrive. And when as a society, those that you say, quote unquote, are the least in society are trying to thrive, you still want to, then it's going to be, well, who is least now if all the Black people are trying to thrive?
Exactly.
So who are we going to be able to just say this is the base?
Yeah, you don't belong here.
Exactly.
This is not for your kind.
Exactly. And so I always say that the image of a Black woman thriving or trying to thrive is a very triggering image. Who is she? Who does she think she is? Does she not know her place? Why is she this? Why? So that's a very triggering image. And my work is saying, you know what, we all deserve to thrive. We all deserve to live out our purpose, to self-actualize. We need to be in fertile soil that will let us grow.
Yes.
You know, and it's a shame that maybe the Swedish industry is not recognizing that. As long as the people that I'm writing for feel seen, heard, and acknowledged, that's it. Because then nobody can gaslight you out of your lived experience.
Exactly.
You know, and so that's what I'll keep doing. This work is just writing about what it means to navigate the Nordics in my skin.